Hello everyone, my name is Taylor, and I am giving my presentation on France. And I chose France because simply because I would just love to travel there. I am a person that loves to travel everywhere, yet I've never been overseas. If I do go, I would definitely want to visit France for many reasons. Of course, the shopping, the Eiffel Tower, um, and the restaurants, of course. So that is simply the only reason why I chose to do France. France is one of the biggest countries in Europe, population-wise. It's about 66,600,000 people live in France, and compared to the U.S., at about 300 million. Of course, that's pretty small, but it is a big country for Europe. The capital of France is Paris, and we all know of Paris because of the Eiffel Tower. And if you've been to the one in Kings Island, well, the one in Paris is about 3 times that size. So, yeah, the government of France is a unitary-style government, a semi-presidential, and it is a constitutional republic. And we can get into more of that later on, and when we get to the history of France. And the currency in France is a euro, and we all know of the euro. The euro value compared to a U.S. dollar currently is $1.38. The major cities in France, of course, the biggest one is the capital of Paris, and a little over 2 million people live there. And no other city in France compares to Paris, population-wise. The closest one that we have population-wise to Paris is in Marseille, and that is about 794,000. And then it just goes down from there with Lyon, Toulouse, Nice, Nantes, and Strasbourg. And Strasbourg at only 274,000. Kind of gives you an idea of the major cities in France and how they compare to the capital of Paris. Okay, so a little bit about France here before we dive into the history and the media and some more facts about France. The national motto, they live by liberty, equality, and fraternity. International Day, and we'll cover this later, and holidays is a Bastille Day, and that's on July 14th. So that's like their Independence Day. The national anthem is Marseillaise. Excuse my French. I can't really speak French, of course. And their flag, as shown on slide 2, is a tricolor, a red, white, and blue flag. So it's just the 3 stripes that we saw before. And their primary language, of course, is French. Most people do speak English, though. Religion in France kind of struck me when I was doing research on France. For some reason, I still thought that they were under the monarchy. I don't know if I was just getting that confused with England or what, but I actually learned here that the religion in France is like a free religion, kind of like here in the U.S. So, as the Constitution of 1958 states, France is an indivisible, secular, democratic, and social republic, guaranteeing that all citizens, regardless of their origin, race, or religion, are treated as equals before the law and respecting all religious beliefs. The freedom to practice religion has been recognized since 1905, when the law on the separation of the church and state came into effect. This law returned all religions to the private sector and established a state secularism in the public sphere. The French state does not favor one religion and guarantees their peaceful coexistence in respect of the laws and principles of the public. So basically, they gave people the right to believe in whichever religion they feel. However, if they don't want to, there is no pressure to follow a certain religion. And secularism, by definition, because I didn't know what this meant, so I of course had to look it up, is a spirit or tendency, especially a system of political or a social philosophy that rejects all forms of religious faith and worship. And we'll learn later that this is actually taught in a lot of schools. It's like the main focus of the schools nowadays rather than the Roman Catholicism. The Roman Catholic Church, of course, is the main dominant religion in France currently, and it's always played a significant role in French culture and French life. So most French people are Roman Catholic Christians. However, many of them are secular but still place a high value on the Catholic Church. So that kind of gives you an idea. This is what I learned mostly about as far as just the basic facts about France. For some reason, this really took me by surprise, like I said before. Okay, so the first type of media I'm going to talk about France are newspapers. And similar to here in the U.S., newspaper readers and reading in general is just on the downfall. And that, of course, is because the internet, people can just get online and read the internet, articles online. Broadcast media has taken them down, of course. So, and after World War II, 28 papers had a combined circulation of about 6 million. So right after World War II, they were in their healthiest state. 7 years later, that figure has nearly been cut in half. And of course, that's because the innovation of broadcast media is taking over, similar to here in the U.S. Only about 164 people out of 1,000 claim that they are still considered like newspaper readers, quote unquote, and they still read print material regularly. And that's a small amount compared to what it was back in World War II or right after World War II. There are still about 80 daily newspapers still in use, and there are a wide range of weekly newspapers. And the weekly newspapers are usually used like on the internet. A lot of them don't really print anymore, so they're just articles online, or they have a lot of websites that they catch up with online. So I have here listed a few of the newspapers that are still in circulation over in France. One of the biggest ones is the agency France Press, and that's one of the world's biggest 3 news agencies. Another one here is a Connection. The newspaper is offering news, information, and classified ads for English-speaking people living in France. The Expatica.com is a quality information portal providing daily French news and essential information on living and working in or moving to France. The next one is the Expatriates magazine is printed publications for Expatriates in Paris. It's distributed within the largest organizations in France. And France 24 is a global news channel owned by the public broadcaster and TF1. And TF1 is one of the biggest television networks that we'll learn about in just probably on the next slide. Insight features daily news and comments, and most of these newspapers are daily news. In the French property news, we can skip down to that one. Magazine for buyers of property in France. The France Diplomate is basically a Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Herald Tribune we all know as here in the U.S., and it's a well-known international newspaper edited in Paris with a focus on news from all over the world. And these other two, the Paris Voice and Voltaire Network, are also Paris-based international networks about the news. Some of the television networks in France are listed here. I have listed the 5 most popular. TF1, like I discussed in the previous slide, is a privately run media, and that's owned by the Bouygues Construction Group. It plays reality TV shows, games, and variety shows, regular movies, and the movies are mostly box office hits, French and U.S., and they're 2 or more years old. And they also play soap operas. and its news coverage is generally sharper than its competitors. And the station France 2 is state-funded. It's the second most popular network, competing at the same level as TF1, but it has many more quality programs. It plays against TF1 with reality and game shows, recent movies. It has cops and robbers series, and also many high-quality current affairs slots, documentaries, and literary and sports programs. France 3 is France 2's little sister network. It's based on a regional network of studios. It focuses more on quality programming such as current affairs, informative shows, even foreign films with subtitles. This network has a smaller news coverage feed, but it offers a roundup of local news specific to each region. France 5 is a channel based on educational programming in the Franco-German channel Arte, which takes over later in the evening and includes productions from both countries, from documentaries to films, and many thematic studio discussion programs. France 5 is unconcerned with mass viewing figures, but rather target a small but stable audience. And M6 is its typical audience is about 18 to 36 years old, and they began as like a cheap music channel, mostly running pop music clips. Since the shaky beginnings, it has added US soaps and horror movies. And it kind of reminds me of our MTV station. It used to only play music, but now it plays movies and you name it. A lot of reality TV, mainly for the younger audience. Okay, here I have listed television shows that are most popular in France. So when I Googled, most popular television shows, Google was telling me I have to watch The Spiral, you have to watch The Return. So I found that to be really interesting. So we have The Spiral, The Return, The Bracco, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it right. Le Grand Journal, Camelot. So yeah, in this show, the Les Squignals de Info has been on since 1988. So that show is getting old. And it's still very popular over in France, which is really interesting because a lot of shows that we have here in the U.S., a lot of them from 1988 are classified as, oldies. You watch them as like a throwback, not really popular in making new shows, which that's really interesting to me. So the internet in France is very similar to the internet here, except they are just a bit behind as far as connection and speed. They are using the ADSL, and that's the most standard internet in France. And the average cost for a decent amount, of megabytes of internet is about 30 euros a month. And they provide services such as free, unlimited telephones and landlines and digital television as well. And the fiber optics launched in 2009. And the providers are still working to make this the main type of internet access. However, the average cost right now monthly for fiber optics in France is about 70 euros per month. And I have Orange here is the most popular or the biggest internet provider, and they are the leader with half of the market at about 49.3% of the market they own. And that's because they have the ability to overcome slightly higher prices because of its obligation of using fixed prices. Free is the second leader of the market, and it only has about 19.6% of the market. And the other three that I have listed here are smaller, much smaller, and it can go on and on. Social media in France is, of course, very popular. The most popular being Facebook. They also use the YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and of course Google+. And that's how the world stays connected. Air France, Air France is a big promoter of all of these social media networks. Sports in France are, of course, very popular as well. The most popular sport by far is football, and us Americans call it soccer. Tennis ranks second to football. The last Frenchman brought home a title for the French Open was Yannick Noah back in 1983. The last French woman was Mary Pierce in 2000. Handball wasn't well established until 1990 when France made their first team. The sport is popular in primary and secondary schools. France brought home a bronze in the 1993 Summer Olympics and finished third in the 2005 Summer Olympics. Rugby union is very popular in France. Their team is considered one of the largest in Europe. Every year, France participates in the Six Nations Championship, along with England, Ireland, Italy, Scotland, and Wales, and the team has much to feel proud of. They've won the championship 14 times. Their current ranking for the year 2009 puts them in 8th place. Cycling is popular because of the event we all know of, Tour de France. This event brings a lot of publicity to the area. It lasts 3 weeks in July of every year. Lance Armstrong's 7 wins has done much to increase popularity, minus the fact of everything that has happened with Lance Armstrong. Basketball is very popular in France, but the team is not very good. They still have a lot of work to do to be recognized as a true force on the court. They've yet to win a major international tournament. Music in France, I have here listed some of the biggest genres of music. One of the most popular is spectral music, which is like here in the U.S., like electronic music, techno. That's very popular over in France right now. Opera is surprisingly still popular in France. It dates back to the 17th century. Now, classical music is very popular among the rich and wealthy people of France. And other genres of music like pop and rock are popular in France among the young people, or the younger group of people, like they are here in the USA. And I do have listed here a few of the most popular artists right now. Currently pictured is Joyce Jonathan. She's a pop singer. So holidays in France are a big, big deal. One of the first holidays of the year is Easter. It's celebrated just like it is here in the U.S. And they also turned Easter Monday into a bank holiday, and that's especially reserved for children who first thing in the morning go on an Easter egg hunt. But they do that on Monday instead of Sundays, which I think that's very interesting. But as far as the Jesus's resurrection and crucifixion, all of that is the same as it is here in the U.S. as the Christian religion. And the Fête de Travail is, since 1947, the 1st of May has been a paid public holiday in France. It is a legal requirement that on this day, all employees are entitled to a paid holiday. Traditionally, a day on which trade unions protest in large cities. It is also a Lily of the Valley Day, which is customary to exchange Lily of the Valley flowers for good luck. The victory of the 8th of May 1945 marks the anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe. So Germany surrendered, and the United Nations, and France won. The unconditional surrender of the Nazi Germany ended a 6-year conflict in Europe that killed tens of millions of people. So this is something that they celebrate every year since the victory. The long weekend of Ascension is a holiday 40 days after Easter when Jesus ascends into heaven. It's one of the first long weekends of spring. It provides a foretaste of the holidays into summer when the French countryside is celebrating the return of spring. And Bastille Day is commemorating the storm of the Bastille on the 14th of July in 1789. It takes place on the same date every year. It is accompanied by fireworks and public dances in towns throughout all of France, and it became a holiday in 1880. Assumption is one of the great feasts of Christian life. It celebrates the glory of Mary with God at the end of her earthly life. Mary, after her death, was taken from earthly life to enter the life of God. So this is what it celebrates. Assumption comes from a Latin word that means to lift, and it should be distinguished from the weekend of Ascension in the spring. They usually celebrate this with feasts and village festivals. Now, All Saints' Day, like it says, is the first day of November, and it's a festival, of course, all the saints honored by the Catholic Church. It is not a commemoration of the day, that is November 2nd. However, All Saints' Day became a public holiday, where families are to go to the cemeteries and lay chrysanthemums on the graves of their nearest and dearest. The Armistice Day of November 11th marked Germany's surrender to end the First World War, and it became a day of remembrance to pay tributes to the soldiers. In France alone, with 39.6 million citizens, lost 1.4 million soldiers and 300,000 civilians, and had 4,266,000 military wounded. So that only just gives you barely an idea of how deathly the World War I was, and why they now celebrate the victory or Germany's surrender every year. And of course, Christmas is the same as it is here. On December 25th, they celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. And Christmas, like it is here, is now an opportunity for all the generations in a family to come together and enjoy themselves. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I was kind of shocked to see how similar France is to here in the U.S. I mean, I won't say I was disappointed, but I was kind of hoping for a little more differentiation between here and the U.S. But overall, I did learn a lot about France, and I hope that you guys did too.